After a few years of successful Japanese horror remakes, the summer of 2005 saw the release of yet another J-horror-inspired film, Dark Water. Now, to be clear, this isn't the pirate cartoon, the random atmospheric horror movie, or the thriller on streaming. This is the one starring Jennifer Connelly and John C. Reilly, and directed by Walter Salles. You know, the billionaire in his late 60s who somehow looks about 20 years younger and that he just walked off a GQ shoot. 20 years ago, Dark Water hit theaters and managed a decent box office run, though critically it paled in comparison to the original. So what are the big differences between the remake and its source? Who was almost cast in the lead? Does this movie even belong in the horror genre? And how did a tragic real-life case give it a legacy that nobody saw coming? Let's dive into the deep end and figure out what the f*** happened to 2005's Dark Water. Japanese horror was riding a high in the late 90s and the 2000s, thanks to its bold, forward-thinking storytelling and bone-chilling scares. Then the real horror began, Hollywood deciding to cash in. Along came a wave of remakes that watered down both the terror and the innovation. Sure, The Ring turned out solid, but let's be honest, do any of the other J-horror remakes of the era? Dark Water was one of the many remakes that we got, and it did manage to stand apart from the endless parade of CGI ghost kids that were creeping not only into theaters, but on TV and video rental stores. Honestly, American J-horror villains were so rampant at the time, it's kind of shocking that McDonald's didn't offer the Ring or the Grudge Happy Meal toys. File that in the missed opportunity section. The original Dark Water was released in 2002 and earned strong praise from both critics and audiences, who admired how its creepiness underscored a genuinely emotional, dramatic storyline. It was based on a short story called Floating Water, the first of 7 tales in Koji Suzuki's water-themed collection Dark Water. The film adaptation ditched the short story title and just used the collection title instead, because it made for a better movie title? Because they didn't read the book? I don't know, but of course the US remake did the exact same thing. Before Dark Water, screenwriter Rafael Iglesias had a few credits that helped show off his range. He co-wrote the 1998 non-musical version of Les Miserables with Liam Neeson and Jeffrey Rush, then jumped into horror territory with 2001's From Hell, where Johnny Depp psychically tracks Jack the Ripper's future murders. And wouldn't you know it, the visions just so happen to lead him to the doorstep of a red-headed Heather Graham as the next victim. Tough job indeed. Walter Salles landed the job directing Dark Water thanks to his Oscar-nominated drama Central Station from 1998, which proved that he could handle the messy dramatics of motherhood. He also admitted to drawing inspiration from Roman Polanski, whose films impressed him from an early age. Dark Water echoed the paranoia and dread of 2 Polanski classics, Rosemary's Baby and Repulsion. After making his mark with Portuguese and Spanish films, Salles was ready to step into his first English-language project with this remake, explaining that what drew him to it was the script and the characters that seemed to jump right off the page. Iglesias described Dark Water as a Freudian horror movie. To him, the murky water and ghostly presence weren't just scares, but metaphors for the lead character's unraveling mental state. Iglesias explained that this story of a woman in jeopardy, not from a serial killer, but from the collapse of her own psyche, was an idea that he had been carrying around for a long time. Funny enough, the leading role was offered to an actress who spent plenty of time running from a serial killer, Jennifer Love Hewitt. Unfortunately, she declined, and the part went to Jennifer Connelly instead. Kind of ironic given that Connelly actually turned down the lead role in The Ring. But honestly, it probably all worked out for the best. Hewitt might have brought her Scream Queen energy, but Connelly's signature realism was a perfect match for the film's brooding tone. Not usually one to ham it up, Connelly avoids any melodrama and delivers a grounded performance. As Dahlia, a mother trapped in a constant state of worry, her presence is one of the film's greatest strengths. There's even a scene where the water situation gets so out of hand that every room of the apartment becomes flooded. Watching her sob tugs at the heartstrings, despite me swearing off having feelings several years ago. Joining Connelly is John C. Reilly as the sleazy but charming building manager, Mr. Murray. Riley claimed that the film's script was one of the scariest he'd ever read, which is saying a lot considering his work with Paul Thomas Anderson. Riley based his performance on Alicia Cook Jr.'s Mr. Nicholas in Rosemary's Baby, and as always, he nails it. Ariel Gade plays Cece, Dahlia's daughter. Gade sets herself apart from other child actors, remaining sweet and likable and someone you genuinely want to see dodge the horror, instead of, spoiler alert, having a moment like the little boy in Final Destination Bloodlines. Pete Postlethwaite shows up as Mr. Vec, the creepy, cranky, slimy, grimy maintenance man who walks the line of too sleazy to be a villain and too sleazy not to be throughout the film. Tim Roth plays Dahlia's divorce lawyer, Jeff Platzer, and it feels like Platzer very much holds Dahlia's sanity in his hands, as he acts not just as a lawyer, but as a therapist and friend, and makes sure her leaky ceiling is fixed faster than Riley or Postlethwaite ever could. There are also great performances by Doug Ray Scott as Dahlia's litigious ex-husband Kyle, and Cameron Manheim, Cece's understandably concerned schoolteacher, who unfortunately doesn't get a name. Producer Bill Mechanic said what ultimately makes Darkwater work is that everyone in the cast is, in his words, a phenomenal actor. Case in point, Pete Postlethwaite, who took a role with barely any lines and gave Mr. Vec a grungy Eastern European accent and a whole arsenal of sleazy facial expressions, was able to make the performance feel like a punch in the gut. While the cast and crew embraced these improvised details, the one thing that had to be meticulously planned was the water itself. Mechanic even called it one of the lead characters, since it's practically in every scene. To create the illusion of constant downpour, the crew used overhead rain rigs, which are basically giant sprinkler bars pouring water in precise camera-ready sheets. Jennifer Connelly recalled that during the shoot, the cliché came true. The skies actually opened up and down came a torrential storm, even though that particular scene called for a sunny day. And if rain wasn't enough, the movie also had to live up to its title and give us the actual, darkness of the dark water. The crew didn't only rely on CGI, they also used practical means, adding a dark-colored dye to the water that's used in soft drinks for coloring. And speaking of soft drinks, in addition to the dye, they used expired and flat soda, which honestly tracks. As some of us can attest to, there are few things scarier than a flat soda. The director seemed to put his actors completely at ease. Sure, the cast was already stacked with talent, but the style of Walter Salles really pulled the best out of them. Tim Roth described him as a gentle soul who gives precise notes in private one-on-one conversations. And apparently those notes were so private that no one else on set had a clue what was being said. For all we know, he was just whispering, "Don't screw this up," in Portuguese and walking away. We may never know. Darkwater sailed into theaters in July 2005, opening with just under $10 million. Not fantastic, but respectable. It finished with just about $25 million domestically and pulled in another $42 million overseas, bringing the global total to around $68 million. Not a monster blockbuster, but not a total disaster either, especially against an estimated $30 million budget. Critically, Darkwater earned a middling 47% on Rotten Tomatoes and a soggy 28% audience score, while scoring a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. The overall consensus is that it's sold as a horror movie, but plays more like a slow-burn domestic drama, albeit one with leaky ceilings instead of genuine scares. Critics and audiences alike agreed that it wasn't exactly terrifying, just watchable enough if you were already stuck indoors on a rainy day. The original movie, however, got a much warmer reception, with fans praising it as scarier and more emotionally rich. And the endings show why. Spoiler alert for both films. In the 2002 version, daughter Ikuko returns to the old apartment a decade later and shares a bittersweet moment with her mother's ghost, who reassures her she'll always be there for her. It's eerie, moving, and it feels earned. The remake gives us the microwave version. Cece gets stuck in an elevator, hears mom's voice, and boom, instant closure. Not terrible, just rushed. I'm sure Cece's resilient, but I doubt any kid just shrugs off a great loss like that in one elevator ride. Then again, what do I know? What does hit hard and provide chills is the connection to the real-life case of Elisa Lam. Though the film was released about 8 years prior to Lam's mysterious death, the similarities are hard to ignore. In the film, Dahlia finds the body of a young girl in a water tank above the building, and it results in the arrest of Mr. Vec, who knew of her whereabouts and failed to report it. The girl's body is the reason why the building's water supply became dark and undrinkable. In 2013, the body of 21-year-old Elisa Lam was found similar to the girl in the story in the rooftop tank in LA's infamous Cecil Hotel, after guests reported foul-tasting, discolored water. There are several articles on the eerie parallels between fact and fiction, and while dark water may have otherwise been forgotten, this has definitely given it an unexpected and tragic legacy, and a different lens for the public to see it through. The truth is, Dark Water probably would have fared better if it had been sold as a straight drama. At its core, it's a tearjerker. The cast really does work magic, and Salles delivers a film that's strong thematically as well as visually. The problem is that people walked in expecting a horror movie. Critics and audiences were quick to point out that the scares are minimal, the tension is thin, and at nearly 2 hours long, it overstays its welcome by about 20 minutes. But there's nothing disastrously wrong here. It's just a case of mismarketing and mismatched expectations. And thanks to its eerie, unintended connection to real-life tragedy, Dark Water ended up leaving a lasting mark that most forgotten remakes never could. In that sense, it rises above the darkness. And that, my friends, is what the f happened to Dark Water.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.